CBS News can now confirm the oldest university in the U.S. could be out of an additional $100 million soon. This development comes out of a letter expected to be delivered to federal agencies at some point today. It contains the Trump administration's request to cancel all remaining federal contracts with Harvard University. This is just the latest move in the showdown between the White House and Harvard. Since last month, the Trump administration has frozen about $3.2 billion in grants and contracts with the university. And just last week, the White House attempted to block the university's ability to enroll international students. President Trump talked about that in a social media post, saying, quote, "We are still waiting for the foreign student lists from Harvard so that we can determine how many radicalized lunatics, troublemakers, all should not be let back into our country." He adds the best thing Harvard has going for it is that they have shopped around and found the absolute best judge. Have no fear, the government will in the end win. Well, Harvard's president is reacting to that message. Listen.
In your lawsuit, the most recent of your lawsuits about this, you argue very quickly that this isn't really about international students, that it's an act of retaliation. What is really going on in your view?
In my view, the federal government is saying that we need to address anti-Semitism in particular, but it has raised other issues, including issues about speech, and it includes claims that we lack viewpoint diversity. There are also claims about failure to comply with laws concerning discrimination more generally. For some of this, we have been very clear that we think we do have issues, and I would particularly emphasize the speech issues. We think it's a real problem if, particularly at research universities, students don't feel free to speak their minds. When faculty feel that they have to think twice before they talk about the subjects that they're teaching, that's a real problem that we need to address.
Let's go to CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, what else do we know about this letter?
Well, Mugo, it went out this morning. It went out to various federal agencies because what we've learned is that there are 9 federal agencies that still have contracts with Harvard University, about 30 contracts in all, totaling about $100 million worth. And these are a variety of contracts that the Trump administration now wants to see wound down if possible. The letter told these agencies to review the contracts and terminate them if they're not critical to government operations, and to do it really soon, to do it by the beginning of June. And while $100 million may sound like a lot, and it is still a drop in the bucket compared to the $3.2 billion that the government has already withdrawn from Harvard University in the form of research and grants. And in that interview that you played, the president of Harvard University said, yes, we have problems, we want to address them, but terminating these research contracts and grants that benefit the entire country when there are major medical breakthroughs, scientific breakthroughs, he argued that doesn't help anyone. And all of that will be the focus of an initial hearing in federal court in Massachusetts later today.
And Nancy, we know Harvard is very clearly not the only university that President Trump has criticized. So is this a warning for those other universities?
Absolutely, and I think other universities take it as a warning and a concern that at any point the Trump administration could set its sights on them. The president, for example, in his post over the weekend said what he's very angry about is the fact that they're looking for information about foreign students and their activities that Harvard has not provided. And certainly that sends a message to other universities that if they don't give the administration what it wants, that perhaps they could be next. The president of Harvard University, again, in that interview said, we believe that we have actually provided all the information required under the law, but that this is this is a free speech, freedom of expression issue. We need to be able to run our university the way that we see fit, and so we're not going to go further than we believe we are required to do under the law. In this hearing this afternoon in federal court, the focus is going to be primarily on the other major action that the administration has taken, which is to cut off visas for the nearly 1/3 of Harvard students who are foreigners. And so that's going to be front and center. But all of these other issues are going to come into play because the administration is basically arguing that that this is a personal vendetta and that the Trump administration is retaliating against the university in illegal ways.
And we should note, Nancy, that interview that we showed our viewers with the Harvard University president, that was actually conducted by NPR. And they've also sued the Trump administration over funding. So what more can you tell us about that?
They are also arguing that the Trump administration is illegally retaliating against NPR, against its member stations, because the administration doesn't like their reporting. They say that this is a First Amendment issue. This is a free speech issue, that they are free to report as they see fit. And, it's not as much, the money is not as much of an issue for NPR itself, because it only gets about 1% of its funding from the federal government. But the member stations, the stations around the country, they rely more heavily on the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So this is an issue for them, and they're going to argue that in this lawsuit that this is money that has already been allocated and approved by Congress, and the Trump administration can't just unilaterally decide, you know what, we don't like this funding and we're not going to send it where it is intended.
Right. CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes, thank you so much for your reporting today.